behavioral issues, and then the illegality component there. You ready? Drum roll. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the school. Okay? Okay? Just let me finish. And they basically said school activity, school time, advocating an illegal thing. The Jesus part, they said that's a joke, so we're not really even kind of like addressing the kind of religious nature of the thing. They basically said, you know, going back to this measure, it's kind of like the whole thing is brought down here, so it doesn't receive that much. Maybe if this was a college situation and so forth, would have maybe been a different thing, although granted, I don't think the colleges are necessarily going to punish students on the basis of something like that. Okay? So, limitation to a degree on student speech. Expected expansion or protection of student speech being protected in a particular situation there. Okay? Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So, another thing is that it feels like much more of a statement than anything. Like, it's not saying do wrong things for Jesus or something wrong things for Jesus. It's simply saying wrong things for Jesus.
Is there a verb?
What?
It's like I'm getting into. So we need to bring Mrs. Rao in here to do like a literary analysis, a sentence analysis on this. What is this? It is just this. You would say it's a noun. A noun for a noun.
Yes, I say it's a noun.
As opposed to bong hits with Jesus, bong hits around Jesus. You know, what the heck? That's a verb.
Exactly. I'm saying in this case it's a noun.
Okay. All right. Shall we move on? Oh, here we go. This was a controversial case. You ready? Write this down. Speaking of a religious figure, Jerry Falwell, okay, Jerry Falwell is a religious figure, and he's also a political figure. He's both. He was a pastor in Lynchburg, Virginia, and he was a founder, I want to say, in the late 1970s into the 1980s of a group known as the Moral Majority. They wanted to participate and express their points of view on a whole range of different issues, including abortion. I think even the same-sex marriage issue came up there, but there was a variety of different things. So they were participating, as Jerry Falwell would say, from a perspective of what their religious beliefs were and giving their opinions in the political arena. And once you get in the political arena, it can get pretty rough. And so he knew that if he was going from a traditional, small-town pastor into becoming a national leader, it was going to get pretty rough. And it did. Okay? You get attention when you become the leader of a large group that's participating in public discourse. One of the folks that didn't think very highly of Jerry Falwell's views was the, what was his name? Larry Flint. Larry Flint, who was the publisher of Hustler magazine. If you've never heard of Hustler magazine, consider yourself not very well versed in the history of hardcore pornography in the United States of America. Okay? Hustler magazine was a hardcore pornographic magazine. Okay? So it's like Playboy on steroids. Okay? Not only did they have images and content that had to do with hardcore pornography, they also engaged in political discourse. Okay? So here we go. Are you ready? So, we haven't even gotten to this, and it's interesting because you got Jerry Falwell talks about his first time, and it looks like it's an advertisement for alcohol. This is a parody ad that appeared in Hustler magazine, okay? And you can't read that, which is just as well. But if you could, what you would read is that Hustler magazine is making fun of Jerry Falwell, okay? They're basically saying, Jerry Falwell, you Christian leader, you cultural conservative leader, you are a horrible person, all right? Here are the facts. Because Jerry Falwell is going to sue him for defamation. This is a defamation lawsuit. And since it was printed, it is a libel lawsuit. If it's printed, it's libel. If it's spoken, it's slander. Works out pretty much the same way either way. You can call it defamation. If you were to read the content of that, Um, Jerry Falwell is accused of having behavior with, I think, his mother and other family members, and I can't remember if there were maybe even some pets involved in the very intimate behavior. In other words, he's accused of just like, yeah. So here's the deal. Jerry Falwell's like, that is a diminishment of my character and reputation, and not only is it false, but you have every reason to believe that it's false. What is Larry Flint, the publisher, the owner of Hustler Magazine, what is his response? He says it's one big fat joke, and it is political commentary in the form of a joke. In other words, he's trying to, Hustler Magazine and Larry Flint are trying to knock down Jerry Falwell by making stuff up completely. Do you have any questions about the background, the facts of that case? It's going to be a very interesting case. Can Jerry Falwell bring a successful lawsuit for defamation against Hustler Magazine on this free speech issue? Question. It's published. Somebody pointed it out to him. It's not like the most widely distributed magazine and so forth, but it's out there. Somebody got wind of it. In fact, here's the deal. I wouldn't be surprised at this. If Hustler Magazine maybe like put it in an envelope and mailed it to him going, hey, in your face, right? Because I'm sure they're not necessarily expecting that he is going to like go to the store or subscribe to that magazine and so forth. But he gets wind of it, and he knows that there's people that read it, and so therefore he's bringing the lawsuit. Does that make sense? Did you have a question, Anthony? Okay, do you guys want to discuss it? And then I will tell you how the ruling works. Let's just go straight into the discussion. Okay, open discussion. Go for it. Oh, you guys are already breaking up into your old thing. Okay, that's fine. How would your court rule? Falwell or Hustler? You say Falwell? They've gone past the line. For who? But what is the question? To which the answer is yes. For the magazine, okay. Was that a unanimous decision? Oh, okay. There we go. No. I think it's kind of like, because it's so, their position is this is so clearly satire that we don't need to put a disclaimer on there to say that it's satire. Looks like satire, walks like satire, it's satire. You're on the court. This is a constitutional, like, free speech right. You're saying, hey, if you're going to get in there with the big boys and girls, you got to be ready for some punches being thrown around. Or not. All right, let's hear from you guys. I want to hear some opinions. Looks like some of you guys quickly arrived at a particular position. It sounds like just from walking around that there's a variety of different positions. You want to volunteer to say, okay, how would you guys rule?
So, we were a hung jury.
Oh, so split court.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I think
It's
that
okay.
magazine should win because it could fall under artistic representation.
Oh my God.
No, separate.
Yeah, no, okay. So artistic as in
separate
comic.
from pornography. You could argue that the like it's a
And all that other stuff that's in the magazine is irrelevant.
yes, it is irrelevant.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So separate from the pornography, you could argue that this is like some sort of comedic joke which could be falling under the artistic representation, protections.
Is it also political speech? Attacking the views of a politician in a very satirical, artistic manner.
Well, it has nothing to do with any sort of political concept or standpoint. We're just talking about one politician.
Well, he's not an actual politician, but he's a political figure getting involved in it. He doesn't run, but, he supports different candidates in their various different positions. Okay, let's hear from you.
Okay, one question.
Yes.
Did Falwell know that they were going to take this
This was not an interview. This is not an interview. They just made this stuff up. No, yeah, I mean, it's a surprise to him. Okay. Okay. All right. Chris, and then here.
Also, hang on.
Okay, shh.
Since it said he had intercourse, I guess, wouldn't that be anti-religion?
Oh yeah, they are clearly taking his views about the sanctity of marriage and traditional like intimate behavior and so forth, and they're flipping it upside down and they're saying all that stuff that you say is really shouldn't take place, you yourself have done, which they're saying is like a big joke, ha 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 ha. As in, let me throw this out into the mix, because here's what Hustler would say. No one is going to believe these accusations. The public knows Jerry Falwell, and they know that he didn't do it. We're just having a joke at his expense by making him feel uncomfortable and being rude to him. Yes, go ahead, MK. I'm sorry, you were next. But anyway, come back. Really?
Chocolate milk.
Shh.
I want to side with Falwell now because, yeah, I mean, some people might believe it, and it's not very fair because they made up that stuff. Even if it is satire, it's still made up. It's not quite fair to the people who might believe it.
Okay. You were going to say, sorry, go ahead, Gabe. So, kind of like along what MK was saying, somebody might look at that and go, oh my gosh, it really is an interview. Jerry Falwell really did that. Oh my gosh, if that's what Jerry Falwell is really saying in this interview that appears in Hustler magazine, which I didn't even think that he read, oh my gosh, he must just be the worst terrible person and a hypocrite. Oh my gosh, because he actually does all these things and then he like comes out against him like, you know, in his public life. Oh my gosh, he's just a total hypocrite. How many people really would believe that? Yeah. But that's an interesting thing, right? When you're evaluating on the defamation, how do you take that? Does everyone have to believe it, or do most people, you know, where does it come in? Let's do it. Anybody else want to chime in before we do? I'm going to do the whole big class vote on this one. All right? How many of you guys would rule in favor of Jerry Falwell in this particular case? Okay. How many of you guys would rule in favor of Larry Flint in the Hustler magazine? For the free speech, basically saying this is a joke and so forth. All right, you ready? Drum roll. And I think we got the year of the case too. If you look in there, yeah. Okay, so 1988, winner, Hustler magazine. The Supreme Court, and they really came down on the side that, in spite of what MK said, that there are people that might actually believe this, they say the reasonable, well-informed, average person is going to know that this is just a really crude, in-your-face joke, and that is to be expected and is going to be coming out. And oh my gosh, and here's the deal. If you go into public, I mean, I think, honestly, since that time, I think it's gotten worse. Because I look at some of the garbage that comes out to the people who are running for office, particularly a national office, it's horrible. I'm thinking, wow, those families and the people, it's like it's amazing that anyone runs for office anymore because just nasty stuff comes out. And I gave you the example, I think, last time about Carol Burnett, well-known comic actress. And, yeah, from Annie and so forth. And she sued National Enquirer because they printed something basically saying she was a drunk. And they were not accurate, and they should have known they were not accurate. And even though she's a public figure, she won the lawsuit against them for defamation. They had to retract it and everything. Jerry Falwell didn't do that. I think the court looked at it and said, okay, it's politics, and it's ugly, and it's rough, and so forth. And so most people should really know that that's not really defamation because most people aren't going to believe it. If you changed it, and instead of it was being Jerry Falwell, it was you, would that be defamation? Heck yeah. Because people don't have that same kind of information about you. Here's the danger. if it was just somebody walking on the street and all of a sudden they became a meme and like their little video or so forth went viral, they went from being like an average nobody to becoming all of a sudden an internet sensation. Because which dude? Yeah, the cranberry dude. I mean, I'm glad that was a positive thing. But if somebody did something like that on the cranberry dude, I mean, you're like, did the cranberry dude do anything to put himself out to become a public figure? I think he posted on TikTok his video, and then it just went, vroom. I mean, what happens if you put a video on a publicly accessible like source? And he sings like a Fleetwood Mac song. It's just really chill, yeah. And then, yeah. He's from Idaho Falls, and yeah. So anyway, it's cool. Yeah, it's okay. So I think that's kind of how it shakes out there. I think the fact that he was a public figure, although how many of you guys are like, yeah, okay, fine, that's a cool decision? How many of you guys are like, I disagree with that decision? All right, you stick with your guns on that particular one. That's the Supreme Court, okay? They give a lot of credence to free speech. Free speech, free speech, free speech. Particularly the news media. And actually, it is kind of scary because is the news media always like accurate, 100% correct? Do people have a lot of trust in the news media? Make a little note of this. Surveys show, and I always check this stuff. It's in the news. America's level of trust in news media sources has been going down over time. And this is tough because the news media is, here we go, freedom of the press. Write this down. Freedom of the press. The news media is like, they have rights for free speech. It's kind of like free speech. The Supreme Court is like free speech with a megaphone. Right? Actually, that could be almost any of you guys now because it's not that hard. You don't have to have big, massive printing presses and massive things. You could put a thing on the cloud, and all of a sudden you could have lots and lots and lots of followers. I mean, literally, you could do like a news blog, or you could do like, and you can get a lot of followers nowadays. But the courts have been very, very protective of the rights of the news media. What are the limitations? Sometimes the news media is going to be able to get into certain areas that you guys can't. So, for example, trials, public trials. Public trials, there's only so many seats in the trial room, although you could put a camera in there and a lot more people can watch it. So if you wanted to watch the trial in Minneapolis of Siobhan, you guys know what I'm talking about? The guy with the knee, the George Floyd guy, the police officer, you could watch that because that's been on. I know some people have watched a lot of that, and I think the defense just rested. By the way, Siobhan took the fifth. He did not testify. Can he do that? Yeah, so therefore, if he's not giving information, does he have to answer questions from the prosecutor? No, that's the same thing that O.J. Simpson did, a tactical decision. We'll see how it all plays out. But that's something they can do. You guys, Owen brings up the point, you guys can't go into like war zones and so forth, although a lot of reporters, it's pretty hard for them too. And even then, if you're kind of like going along with the United States military forces, a lot less access to like frontline things than maybe occurred in previous wars. In fact, let's get to this. Write this down. The Vietnam War. That was tough, right? That was the last time we had a draft. That went on for quite a while. Although it's not the longest war in U.S. history. The longest war in U.S. history is one that you guys don't even probably know that's still going on, perhaps, and it is going to end as of September 11th, 2021. Afghanistan, yeah. Yeah, President Trump was like, well, let's have the troops out by May 1st. Well, he's not the president on May 1st. So President Biden's like, let's do September 11th. People remember September 11th. Of course, the sad thing about it is the people who we tried to throw out of power, and did temporarily, in Afghanistan, the Taliban, the ones who are like, hey, come on over here, Osama bin Laden and all your al-Qaeda buds, and you can do a little training here in Afghanistan, right? And they did the September 11 attacks. We tried to get rid of them, but they just won't go away. So how, are we committed in the long run to trying to keep them out of power in Afghanistan? No, we kind of given up. Okay, so we walked away. And not even like a declaration of victory walking away. With Vietnam, we declared victory, or at least we declared peace. And the communists in Vietnam, they were like, oh yeah, we won't attack after you leave. Liars. Within a couple of years, they attacked and took over the whole country. So the Vietnam War, write that down. This was very controversial and so forth. And this was very interesting because within the context of the Vietnam War, the government had official positions as far as what was going on with the war, how many people died, what was going this way and that way, and so forth. The collection of that information that was actually really going on, as opposed to what was public, what was given to the public, is known as the Pentagon Papers. This is where things get very interesting. And they're going to go to the Supreme Court. You ready? The Pentagon Papers case involved some classified government documents that purported to show what was really happening in the Vietnam War as far as American involvement. That didn't necessarily make the United States look that good. It made it look like the United States government, over several administrations, including the administration of Kennedy, Johnson, that the United States was being a little bit more optimistic about how things were going, and that things weren't really necessarily going that well. Do you understand that? So there was a guy who had access to classified documents, and you know what he decided to do with those documents? Release them to the New York Times. Okay? Release them to the New York Times, one of the biggest national newspapers. What? Now, here's the deal. There's two different questions. Listen carefully. There's two different questions going on here. One, does the guy who releases that, and you can think of like Edward Snowden now, who's released all kinds of stuff, or the WikiLeaks guys, are they in trouble for breaking government responsibilities and so forth? Yeah. Fair, they could be in trouble for that part of it. But the information itself, if it gets into the hands of the public or the news media and then the public, can that be released? That was the interesting question relative to the Pentagon Papers. The government, and actually the irony is, when the New York Times started printing some of these things, Nixon, number 37, the Republican president who came after Johnson, and he was just in there. Nixon is like, we don't want those to be printed. So he sends his attorneys into the court and gets an order, at least a temporary order, preventing the New York Times from printing them. So if New York Times continues to print them, then they're in violation of the court order. That's a separate problem. If the New York Times loses that order, what do? They appeal, okay? They appeal. Or here's what actually happened. The guy who had the documents made sure they also ended up at the Washington Post, another newspaper. So they're looking at all these things and going, well, the court order doesn't apply to us, although, I don't know, there could be a court order, and I don't know, maybe they could put us out of business, or I don't know, maybe we could be the great defenders of free press, and let's just have all this stuff out there. So what did they decide to do? They decided to print it, and they printed it fast. I mean, they just like, everything's out there. I mean, nowadays, you don't have to wait for a newspaper to be printed. If you have a lot of documents and you want them to release to the entire public, what do you hit? Click. Right? I mean, it's like, that's how it goes. So this is an interesting thing because in this instance, the Pentagon Papers case ultimately went up to the Supreme Court. And I will tell you this, write this down. The Supreme Court said it's not national security when you have documents, even if they're classified. The information in those classified documents that was released to the public basically shows that the war's not going very well. It doesn't show nuclear launch codes. It doesn't show super high secretive stuff. It basically shows, to the court's view, things aren't going as well, and maybe you should have told the public about it. You understand that? So who won the case ultimately? The news media, yeah. So Post, New York Times, etc. Okay? And of course, Hollywood, don't be surprised if they look back at the situation and go, woohoo, for the free press. And, great actors get to play. Katharine Graham, the owner of the Washington Post. Meryl Streep, a great actress, won lots of Academy Awards. She plays the owner of the Washington Post. And then Tom Hanks plays the top editor-in-chief, Ben Bradley, in the movie called The Post. I'll show you the preview. Shall you? Yeah. Here's my quick answer, without revealing anything, and here's what I would say to you, because this is something that's going to come up when we get to our very last unit. The news media, I have found to either be leaning this way or leaning that way a lot. So what do you do if you've got a particular news source that leans one way a bit too much or leans another way a bit too much, what do? You get a lot of different sources. That's what I try to do. All right? And if one of them ends up being very lacking truth, I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time with that. I want to get, because I know that there's going to be a little bit of a bias there. More sources, you get maybe a little bit closer to what's really going on. Okay, here's the one, DreamWorks for The Post. Thank you.
Oh dear, I don't like hypothetical
Mostly during the Johnson years.
Thank you, I'm so good, friends. Let's do our job. Find those papers.
We're talking about exposing years of government secrets.
Is that legal?
What is it you think you're doing it for a living here? I might have something.
You must be precious cargo.
It's just government secrets.
Never lie to a flight attendant.
Publishing any more classified documents dealing with the Vietnam War. If you publish, we'll give the Supreme Court next week.
They weren't under the court order. What about that?
I'm asking your advice, Bob, not your permission.
But you can't do this. The legacy of the company is at stake. What will happen if we don't publish it? We will lose. The country will lose. What are you going to do, Mrs. Grant?
It's also a very interesting movie because she inherited control after her husband died. So there's sort of that like, oh, can a woman be in charge of actually running a major newspaper as the owner? Actually, do you know who owns the Washington Post today? You've heard of him, probably. He's got a lot of vehicles in this area, and he's got a lot of vehicles in all kinds of different parts of the country. Bezos. Who's Bezos? Amazon. He owns the Washington Post. He had a little bit of extra cash, and so he bought the Washington Post. Oh, wow, we're going to have much time to get into. Next time, we're going to talk about the Washington Post and Watergate. By the way, if you don't publish in the Washington Post, can you just publish it in a newspaper in Canada? Does Supreme Court or federal court decisions apply to Canada? I don't think so. No. Yeah, once upon a time, like, I think the British media were like, you can't publish this about the king and the queen and the royal family. And so how did British people find out what was going on in the royal family? They read American newspapers. Seriously. I mean, they did. Anyway, wipe down. Yeah, this is a good place to stop. Okay. Wipe it down so that you guys are able to leave in a dutiful fashion.